all movies start with one thing, which is a script. And David never had that.
I think David felt like once we got into the shooting, then his destiny would be in his own hands. And until we were shooting, he was subject to too many influences.
I think that when you go through any production, it's difficult, it's hard. I think when you go through your first one without a script, it's even harder.
We got flown to London to start putting a crew together, and of course I think they were happy that we had been involved in the last one and that there would be a continuity.
Vincent Ward had been over there and had been working with Norman Reynolds, who did the sets for Alien3, had built the sets for the Vincent Ward script. Then they brought Fincher on as a new director.
David Fincher was suggested by head of the studio, actually, Roger Birnbaum. And we looked at his reels and we met him.
We had lunch with him at the Fox commissary, David, Walter, and I, and we had not met him before. And he was incredibly impressive. One of the most extraordinary meetings I think I've ever had. And it just gave us the confidence.
David comes from music videos as well as some magnificent commercials. He has an effects background. He used to work at ILM.
He was an effects cameraman who went into the music video industry, did a number of really pretty high-profile music videos, and Alien, I guess, was his first feature.
We wanted to, once again, to go with a director that did not have an established track record per se, but we thought was going to be a major director in the years to come.
I thought Fincher was a great idea, and so I liked him right away. Then we were in this big meeting at Fox, and with all the suits and everything, and I think he was wearing an animal rights T-shirt. I finally said toward the end of the meeting, "So how do you picture Ripley in this movie?" And he said, "I don't know, bald?" And that was the moment where I fell in love with him, because I thought, that's such a great idea. You have to do it, you have to make it make sense, but I just thought, absolutely.
So Fincher committed, and we were back in London, and now we're going to rewrite the script.
And David Fincher was like a breath of fresh air, really. And in fact, I was the first person to greet him in the art department. I thought, in fact, he was the director's assistant. He was so young.
He came in not having that preparation time, not having all the meetings, and not necessarily having a full script to work with, because of the conceptual differences that the first director that they had employed had brought onto the production. He then wanted to put his ideas into Alien3.
He took Vincent's original idea, but he changed it to a mechanized planet. He changed it to a convict planet.
David wanted a more mechanical concept of this planet that was perhaps at one time had been a very thriving factory kind of a planet, and I don't know whether it had always been a prison planet or it turned into that, but in the meantime everything was in waste and rusted and broken down, and quite once again a dark look to everything.
He did say at one point what he was looking for was something where you could throw in a bucket of water and just hose the place down, the entire planet. So that's his sort of brief to me, and that's from that all sorts of things have sprung, really.
It was Fincher's idea to shave all their heads, put barcodes on there, He had a whole other quite different take, but would allow us to, was within the realm of, it was a spin-off of Vincent's original idea.
They had started out with Vincent with this script, and because of the old creative difference, problem, and then he was gone. So they had all this money that they had already spent on, making pay-or-play deals with actors and so on. plus building all these sets, and Norman builds the world. And I mean, he was like going berserk building sets over there, because that's what he loves to do, and he's great at it. So, I mean, they had a lot of money invested in this movie, but all of a sudden they didn't have a script.
The script that we originally spoke about has changed very much so. So what I did was actually to design the set in such a way that it basically embodied some of the things that David wanted to do, and sort of set them up where I thought best. And I think David actually went back to the set, and with the writer, they sort of evolved things that he wanted to do, but was more precise about where they were actually going to be done. It's almost the cart before the horse in some ways, you know.
So that rewrite came in, and it was a disaster, and everybody walked off the movie. So nobody was going to do that one.
There was a 3-month period where we were in effect shut down. We kept working on the creature stuff, but we were kind of, working away on dead bodies and things, not the actual creature.
We spent most of the summer working on the dead bodies of Hicks and Newt and Bishop that they find in the wreckage, as well as starting design work on the alien, because at that point everything else in the script was subject to being thrown out. We didn't know where all that stuff was going to go. So we had a crew of Americans. We had a lot of our English crew was assembled, and we were just going into great detail on these bodies, trying to continue to have work to keep people busy with for a number of months before the script was finally revised to the point and we could start trying to catch up for the rest of production, because the shoot was going to be happening in I think it started in November.
Yeah, you'll be real glad to know that everybody's back in this movie. Hicks?
Rafaela De Laurentiis, who I was doing this movie for, a little movie that I won't mention the name of, she had been over to the Pinewood Studios, and she said she saw my character, Hicks, made up of like a dummy character of me, laying on the ground with my chest opened up, as if the alien came out of me. So, oh, that's interesting. So I called my agent, who's Ed L'Amato, who's like way up there, and I said, Ed, what the fuck, man? I mean, it's one thing not to be in it. It's another thing for me to have had fucking that alien come back in me and have it come out of my chest with, blah, blah, blah. I said, no fucking way can they do this, can they? And he said, no, man, that's your likeness, and they can't, and so on and so forth. So he called them up, and he said, I don't know how far they got, but they were told that they couldn't do that, and we would sue them. And so first they started saying, well, can we pay Michael for this? Can we pay, we'll pay him a certain amount of money. I said, I don't care how much money you have. I was really stupid back then. I don't care how much money you have, that alien is not coming out of my chest, okay? And so that was that. So then we got a call, a month or two later, that they wanted to use my photograph. I said, now you can pay me. So they did. So I got paid almost as much for that photograph as I did for the first movie that I did. So in certain respect, it helped a little bit, but it was that was all done through like gritted teeth and them saying, well, yeah, okay, we'll pay you, and I'll say, well, you'll pay me more, and back and forth, and so on and so forth, and it wasn't very harmonious, and I'm sure it'll never work. If I would have known David Fincher was going to be David Fincher, I probably would have said, well, you do whatever you want, David, just use me in one of your future movies.
Eventually, Sigourney agreed that if Walter and I would write it, she would do it on faith. And Fincher did too.
It's a hard character to write, Ripley. They're really the only ones, except for maybe Jim, who understand her, because she's always written like a very tough, obnoxious woman by other writers, Shit, crap, it's all this really. But they know that she's just sort of somewhat aloof.
So Walter and I started writing while they were building, and kind of took this concept of Vincent's and turned it around a bit.
They hired him, and it was a great idea, and then almost as soon as he started, they started kind of, unwittingly or not, undermining